This day and time. What happened today, years ago?
Have you ever stopped to think about how history really unfolds? It's not always these huge, grand arcs over centuries.
Right.
Sometimes it feels much more, concentrated, like these intense moments all packed together.
A convergence, yeah.
Yeah,
Like threads pulling tight in one spot.
exactly. And that's what we're digging into today. We're focusing on just 1 week, June 23rd to the 29th, but across different years. And it's not just one or two things. We're talking 7, honestly, global turning points. Stuff that really shaped, well, everything. Politics, society, tech, culture.
And our job here, as we see it, is to go past the basic headlines. We want to pull out the key insights, the really important bits from the sources you've gathered.
Yeah.
Think of it as a shortcut, maybe, to getting properly informed about these intense bursts of history, helping you connect the dots.
Totally. We'll unpack the immediate fallout, the chaos sometimes, but also those long ripples, aiming for those aha moments that make history click. Okay, let's jump in. First stop, June 23rd, 1972, Title IX in the U.S. A huge moment for gender equality. But before this law, what did things actually look like for women, especially in education?
Oh, it was fundamentally different. Really overt discrimination was common.
Like what specifically?
Well, women were often blocked from fields like science, medicine. You could literally be fired for getting pregnant. And in schools, sports funding, forget about it. The gap between men's and women's programs was massive, systemic, really.
Right. And who were the people pushing this change? The key figures behind Title IX?
The sources point to 2 main people. Patsy Mink, she was the primary author. Her own experience being denied medical school, that really drove her.
Wow.
And then Bernice Sandler, people call her the godmother of Title IX. She did the meticulous legal groundwork, even sued hundreds of universities to force the issue.
Incredible. And the law itself, the core of it, is just 37 words long. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, and so on. But here's the fascinating part. You mentioned it didn't explicitly say sports, did it?
No, it didn't. Which is wild considering the impact it had there.
So how did that happen? How did it revolutionize women's sports?
Well, the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, they fought it hard in court.
Yeah.
Really hard.
Okay.
But they lost. And the numbers since then are just staggering. Female college athletes went from around 30,000 to over under 50,000.
Wow.
And in high schools, from maybe 295,000 up to 2.6 million. A massive change.
That's huge.
And beyond sports, Title IX's legacy is broad. It laid groundwork for fighting sexual harassment in schools, pushed for occupational equality, reshaped education generally.
It's not just history.
Not at all. It's still very much alive. It's a living legal battleground,
Yeah.
Debates about transgender athletes, fair facilities. These are Title IX debates happening right now.
Right. Okay, so let's jump forward exactly 50 years. June 24th, 2022. A very recent, very impactful event. The Dobbs v. Jackson decision by the Supreme Court. Before Dobbs, what was the legal landscape for abortion rights?
Well, for almost half a century, the main precedent was Roe v. Wade from 1973. That decision recognized abortion as a right tied to privacy under the Constitution.
Okay.
Then came Planned Parenthood v. Casey in 92. It reaffirmed Roe, mostly, but introduced the undue burden standard that allowed states to put more restrictions in place while still technically upholding the core right.
Got it. So what did the Dobbs ruling actually do?
It explicitly overturned both Roe and Casey. The majority opinion stated point blank that the Constitution doesn't confer a right to abortion.
In the dissent?
The dissenting justices argued pretty strongly that this stripped away bodily autonomy. They also warned it could threaten other rights like access to contraception or same-sex marriage, rights that also based on similar interpretations of the Constitution. We're just reporting what the sources say here, of course.
Of course. So what happened immediately after the ruling? On the ground?
It was fast and chaotic. 13 states had trigger laws ready to go. Meaning abortion bans kicked in almost instantly or very quickly after the decision. This led to like 66 clinics closing their doors. An estimated 22 million women lost access to abortion services in their states. Just immediate upheaval.
Wow. That's significant.
Yeah, and the bigger picture is Dobbs basically redrew the political map. Abortion rights became this intensely politicized battle, state by state.
Right.
We've also seen this new focus on the drug mifepristone, used for medication abortions. But what's also really interesting is that public support for abortion rights seems to remain pretty strong, even in conservative states. We've seen direct ballot initiatives protecting access succeed in several places.
Fascinating. Okay, let's shift from U.S. law to global conflict. June 25th, 1950, the invasion of South Korea, the start of the Korean War. Can you set the scene for us before the invasion?
Sure. So after World War II, Korea was divided along the 38th parallel. By 1948, you had two states, the DPRK in the north, led by Kim Il-sung, and the ROK in the south, led by Syngman Rhee. Crucially, both governments claimed they were the rightful rulers of the entire peninsula. So tension was incredibly high.
A recipe for conflict.
Absolutely. And then, 4 a.m., June 25th, 1950, North Korea launches this massive invasion across the border.
Just like that.
Just like that. And it moved fast. Seoul, the South Korean capital, fell in only 3 days. It really stunned the world.
3 days? That's incredibly quick. How did the international community, specifically the UN, react so fast, especially with the Cold War brewing?
That's a key detail. The UN Security Council was able to pass Resolution 83, authorizing intervention, but only because the Soviet Union was boycotting the council at the time.
Boycotting? Why?
They were protesting about which government should hold China's seat, so their absence meant they couldn't veto the resolution.
Okay. A crucial absence.
Huge. It cleared the way for U.S. military intervention. President Truman initially called it a police action, but, well, it rapidly became a full-blown international war with many UN countries involved.
And the wider significance, how did this fit into the Cold War narrative?
It basically solidified the whole Cold War dynamic. Truman declared communism now resorted to force. Korea became the first major hot front in that global struggle. It wasn't just ideology anymore. It was actual armed conflict between the blocs, often through proxies.
Right, a major escalation. Okay, so just a day later on the calendar, but going back a few years, June 26, 1945, the signing of the United Nations Charter. This was an attempt at the opposite, right? Global cooperation.
Exactly. Coming out of the devastation of World War II and with the failure of the old League of Nations fresh in everyone's mind, the Allies were determined to build something better, something more effective. The San Francisco conference where they drafted the charter was enormous. 50 nations, like 6,000 people involved.
Wow, that's a statement in itself. What were the key agreements hammered out there, especially about power?
Well, the big one, still debated today, was giving veto power to the 5 permanent members of the Security Council: China, France, the Soviet Union, the UK, and the US.
Yeah, P5.
The P5. And an interesting side note, the Soviets also managed to secure separate seats for Ukraine and Belarus. Poland joined a bit later, making it 51 founding members.
And the Charter's main goal was crystal clear: save humanity from the scourge of war. It set up the core UN bodies we still know: General Assembly, Security Council, International Court of Justice.
And there's this inherent tension, or maybe paradox, built into it. Truman said something like, if we do not use it, we betray those who have fallen.
Powerful words.
Yeah. The veto was meant to keep the peace by ensuring major powers weren't forced into conflicts against their will. But ironically, that same veto power can lead to paralysis, inaction, when those powers disagree during a crisis. It's a constant balancing act.
Makes sense. Okay, let's move forward again. June 27th, 1969. Stonewall. Widely seen as the catalyst for the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. What was life like for LGBTQ+ people before Stonewall?
It was deeply oppressive. Constant fear was the reality. Fear of being arrested, fired from your job, being institutionalized. Society, medicine, law, they often labeled LGBTQ+ people as sick or criminal.
Just pervasive discrimination.
Pervasive, yeah. Places like the Stonewall Inn in New York were rare sanctuaries. But even those places weren't safe. They faced constant police harassment, raids were common. Brutal sometimes.
So what happened on that specific night, early morning, June 28th, actually? A police raid, but this time it was different.
It was very different. The raid was met with resistance. Spontaneous, defiant resistance from the patrons and people on the street. Figures like Stormy DeLarverie, Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, they were right there in the thick of it.
And it wasn't just one night?
No, the uprising, the riots, lasted for 6 nights. It was more than just pushing back against one raid. It felt like a community finally saying, enough. A real declaration of presence, as some sources put it.
Declaration of presence. I like that. What happened immediately after?
It was like a spark. It galvanized the community incredibly quickly. New, more radical activist groups formed, like the Gay Liberation Front, the GLF, and maybe most visibly, exactly 1 year later, June 28th, 1970, the very first Pride March took place in New York City. That launched the global tradition we see every June.
So it's fair to say Stonewall wasn't necessarily the absolute first instance of resistance.
Right, there were earlier actions, important ones.
But Stonewall was maybe the right fuse at the right time.
That's a good way to put it. It happened during this wider wave of civil rights and social justice movements. It tapped into that energy, that existing frustration, and channeled it into an organized, visible, and enduring fight for liberation.
Okay, powerful stuff. Now, let's journey further back. June 28th, 1914, Sarajevo. The assassination that lit the fuse for World War I. Can you paint the picture of the Balkans then, Europe's powder keg?
It really was a powder keg. You had rising nationalism clashing with old empires.
Yeah.
Specifically, intense friction between Serbia, which wanted to expand, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was trying to hold its diverse territories together. And underneath, you had secret societies like the Black Hand, a Serbian nationalist group. They were actively plotting to destabilize things, and their target was the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne.
And the assassination itself, it wasn't straightforward, was it?
No, it was almost bizarrely chaotic. Earlier that morning, a bomb attack on the Archduke's motorcade failed.
Right.
But then later, his car took a wrong turn, stalled, or stopped, right in front of Gavrilo Princip, one of the conspirators who thought he'd missed his chance.
Just pure chance.
Seems like it. Princip steps up, fires 2 shots, kills the Archduke and his wife, Sophie. And those 2 shots essentially plunged Europe and then the world into war.
It's staggering how one event could cascade like that. Walk us through the July crisis. How did it spiral so fast?
It was like watching dominoes fall in a horrifying slow motion, but happening incredibly fast. First, Germany gives Austria-Hungary its blank check, basically promising unconditional support.
Okay.
Austria then issues this impossible ultimatum to Serbia. Serbia can't fully accept it. Austria declares war. Russia starts mobilizing its army to support Serbia.
Because they were allies.
Exactly, Slavic allies. Germany sees Russian mobilization as a threat, declares war on Russia. Then France gets pulled in because of its alliance with Russia. Then Germany invades Belgium to get to France, and Britain gets pulled in to defend Belgian neutrality, and boom, World War.
It's just an inescapable chain reaction.
It was this toxic mix. You had these rigid alliance systems, you had intense imperial rivalries, nationalism, and crucially, inflexible military plans and mobilization schedules. Once the first few steps were taken, there was almost no way to hit the brakes. No room for diplomacy to work.
A truly complex convergence. Okay, let's bring it much closer to home and probably into your pocket. June 29th, 2007, the launch of the very first iPhone. Take us back. What was the phone world like before Steve Jobs walked on stage?
Oh man, it's almost hard to remember, right? It was dominated by physical keyboards. BlackBerry was king for email, Nokia was huge.
I remember my BlackBerry.
Right. Phones were for calls, maybe basic email, clunky web browsing. They weren't really seen as powerful computers you carried around. The idea of apps wasn't really a thing for most people.
And then Jobs' presentation in January 2007, what was the big pitch?
He famously called it 3 products in one: a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communicator. The real magic was multi-touch, that intuitive finger-swiping interface, and running a version of their desktop OS, OS X, which made it feel smooth and powerful, all without a physical keyboard. That was radical.
And launch day itself, June 29th, we saw the lines, the hype. But was everyone convinced? I feel like there's some skepticism too.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. It's funny looking back. A lot of tech pundits, serious critics, dismissed it.
Really? Why?
They said, no physical keyboard, that'll never work for business. Or it was too expensive, locked to one carrier initially. They just didn't grasp the paradigm shift it represented. They couldn't see past the features they didn't have compared to existing phones.
Incredible lack of foresight in hindsight.
Totally. And the legacy, it's almost immeasurable. The App Store, launched in 2008, created the entire app economy.
Right. Changed everything.
Changed everything. Communication, entertainment, shopping, photography, advertising, how we get news, how we work. It touched almost every industry. That stat you mentioned, by 2017, 85% of digital photos taken on phones, that says it all. It didn't just launch a product, it redefined modern life.
It really did. Wow. Reflecting on all this, it's kind of mind-blowing. This 1 week, June 23rd to 29th, across different years, holds so much world-altering history.
Yeah.
It really underscores the idea we started with. History isn't always this slow, steady march. Sometimes it just converges fiercely in these short, pivotal periods.
And when you look at the bigger picture, the long game, these events, even though they're from different times, they set off these incredible lasting ripples, from struggles for basic human rights and equality to the start of massive global conflicts, right down to the device. Like you said, that probably shapes how you interact with the world right now. It shows how just a few days can really lay the foundation for the present.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? How a handful of days scattered across time can have such immense power to change global trajectories.
It really is. And maybe that leaves a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. As we're living through our own times, with changes happening so fast, which week happening right now, or maybe just recently passed, do you think future generations might look back on? Which handful of days might they see as having fundamentally shifted our reality? What stands out to you?
Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more history.